We
Anyway,
got Jacob here.
let's bring him in. Jacob, how you feeling? How you doing? Should we ring the
Boom.
size gong
Yeah,
for
hit it.
you preemptively? Congratulations on the round. How's it going? What's the
John,
latest?
Jordy, gentlemen, great to see you guys.
Great to see you.
Good
What's
to see
happening?
you. Give us the breakdown. What are you announcing? And give us the high level pitch for Superpower.
$30 million Series A. It's our biggest capitalization to date. Capital is no longer a constraint, and we're building a super team to reinvent healthcare.
Okay.
Crazy. Give us a backstory.
How does it start for the consumer? Get
No,
labs
no,
done?
no. I was going to say, let's go back
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, let's start with the backstory.
2023,
this?
you had a rough year. You want to share that?
Oh, yeah, that'd be
how
interesting.
that kind of catalyzed Superpower.
Rewinding the clock, it was 2022 actually, and that year I almost lost my life to reverse healthcare incentives and a system that doesn't necessarily help people be proactive and take control. So that was when I was building my last company. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. It's one called Crohn's, which those listeners might be familiar with. 50 million Americans have autoimmune disease, 2/3 of which are undiagnosed. And in my case, it led me to being hospitalized for close to 4 months, had multiple surgeries, lost part of my stomach, got stuck with a multi-million-dollar bill. And you realize really quickly that, the thing that health systems are designed to do from a business model perspective is make the most money. So that's build pharmaceuticals or surgery versus getting at the root cause of like what's actually driving complex diseases in my case. So I was really, more seen as a way for them to make a lucrative billing, cash flow versus actually getting to the root of what was ailing me.
Talk about how that led into Superpower. I remember I think we had lunch just after that period. I remember you were like, it felt like you were almost still in a daze because you just like almost, spent a year almost dying. But you knew from, basically right at that moment, kind of what you wanted to do.
It actually comes back to Twitter. So I posted about my hospital story and it went mega viral. And as a result, I got connected to a handful of these like high-end concierge doctors who basically work with the tech billionaire class.
Yeah.
And they charge like 50 to 100K for their clinics. And what you do when you're a patient at these practices is they test everything in your body, leave no stones unturned. They'll like sit down with you on a whiteboard for 4 hours, connect the dots across every little thing in your health, and then pair you with a full-time team to basically put your healthcare on autopilot. So if you're fortunate enough to be in a financial position or in the know to be a patient in one of these practices, you're basically never going to die of chronic disease. You're going to look like, the memes of Bezos and Zuck that are super yoked. I know the doctors that probably do their peptide regimens.
You think it's just peptides? You think it's just peptides, or is there a secret juice?
Jiu-jitsu.
I can't reveal too much, but you realize really quickly that there's a gap between healthcare for the best and healthcare for the rest. And obviously, being a technologist and a brand builder, it just became very obvious that there was a big opportunity here to democratize once I went on my own healing journey.
Do you think that founders should, I feel like there's this balance between founders need to be performant, you need to have high energy, you need to be able to oftentimes go 20 meetings in a single day, whatever that looks like. You basically have a life, the intensity in many ways of a professional athlete. What do you think the sweet spot is for founders in terms of, or investors in terms of caring about their health, but not letting it sort of like take over their entire life? I went through a period in college when I had a bit more time where it felt like 60% of my brain power was just like going to like lifting and eating and things like that. And obviously it's not sustainable if you're trying to run a company and things like that. So I'm curious what you think the kind of like sweet spot is in terms of, wanting to be high performance, wanting to be healthy, wanting to not be like, age, accelerating your aging, things like that.
It's quite a quandary, right? Because we obviously pride ourselves on being a team. We even joke that our office is the world's healthiest office, yet, sometimes we still have to put in the hours, and we have the engineering team posting up on the floor.
Let's go.
That'll be really good for the evening. But it really, I think, is an opportunity to usher in a new paradigm shift where we can put health at the forefront of the conversation. I think we're actually about to have our first board meeting here this upcoming quarter, and we plan to have some statistics on the health of our founders and our team in our board slide. So we want to kind of lead the vanguard and what it looks like to have health be like a tracked foundation, just as you would, your Amplitude or your Stripe data or all the metrics that matter for business.
Yeah, I was joking. John and I gave a sort of humorous talk in Miami last year, and we were talking about the case for like VC platform teams should just be like basically like doping, you know, like helping their portfolios, just like
What's your creatine
you know, what's
stack?
your creatine,
Yeah.
you know, what
How much are you working out? What's your 8 sleep score?
looks like we need to add a little bit of tea in the mix
Yeah.
here.
Well,
What
I think someone's going to launch a fund with this thesis where, maybe it'll be me. I don't know.
Unironically?
No, I don't think it's. I think it's a very real. You know,
Yeah.
I joked about this, but I think it's very real. A lot of venture funds, especially if you're niche, you need some type of edge. Some people are like, "Oh, we're going to help you with sales. We'll help you with recruiting. We'll help you with your next round." But just saying like, "We're going to help you
with your 1 rep max.
help you with your
1,000-pound
1 rep
club.
max." Exactly.
1,000-pound ventures.
Talk about the sort of opportunity in AI specifically for Superpower. You guys have started with biomarkers. How do you plan to leverage that to kind of unlock value on the data side and all that?
So in the limit, something that we deeply believe is everyone will have a healthcare super app on their phone. And today, a consumer health experience is deeply fragmented. You know, consumers have to run around town to a bunch of different places, and it's all disconnected. And the front door to health is, something like ChatGPT or Google or WebMD. But the problem with those platforms is they don't really know much about you, and they definitely don't know everything about medicine. So what that sort of culminates in with what we're building is what we think will basically be an AI doctor in everyone's pocket. So we're kind of aggregating all of your medical records and health data, making it super easy to test your whole body, and combining that with all the world's medical knowledge, which does not necessarily exist in foundation models today. Each foundation model is sort of trained on a select aspect of the healthcare and medical literature universe. So there's a lot of creative ways to get a full picture on what's actually happening at the edge of science and medicine. When you put all this together, you have a recipe for a really unique company that we think one day will be something that a large majority of Americans own. And healthcare is ripe, and it's demanding of better consumer experience. We've seen the consumer experience being reinvented for every other aspect of our lives, but healthcare is sort of the last domino to fall. And we want to be basically the predominant company to bring this to the market.
How do you think about the interaction with LabCorp? It's an $18 billion company, kind of, stocks up and stocks down, like kind of, up 60% over the last 5 years. Obviously, when you're doing lab testing, like you kind of got to build on top of like the railroad that's already there. But how does that relationship evolve over time?
Yeah, labs are a super commoditized business. What's really happening and what's exciting to pay attention to is innovation in testing. So today it's actually kind of a cumbersome process.
Yeah.
You have to have like a nurse come to your house. You have to go to a LabCorp. They test your blood. They send it off to another facility. It takes like 8 or 9 tubes to get a full enough panel and picture, and then a week to come back. And there's probably like a dozen or so friction points there. So something like Theranos over the next few probably is not that far off. And thankfully, we're building at the application layer. So we have to be best in the world at building a trustworthy brand, low-cost customer acquisition, and a really amazing AI doctor product. And
what is your takeaway from the Theranos story? Do you think that there's any like sort of misread on that historical like anecdote? Like we've done like a deep dive, and we were like, there's more nuance.
The issue
is
story. Don't apply, build fast, and break things to consumer health.
Yep.
Healthcare doesn't move at the speed of code. Is all. There's a certain reverence you have to have for the human body as a healthcare founder, which makes the Zuck adage a bit tougher to apply.
Yeah. What about interactions with the FDA? I assume that there's oversight around, you get the lab markers done with LabCorp or Quest or something, and then you're interpreting that, and you're at the application layer doing AI data analysis, all sorts of good stuff. But at a certain point, actually making a recommendation about someone's health is probably regulated. What does that look like, and how will it evolve over time?
Yeah, so we're not quite in a world yet where AI and the algorithm can make a medical diagnosis or a recommendation. So the system that we've architected and the paradigm that we're in just as an industry is basically AI with human in the loop. So anytime it gets to a point where a human has to intervene, we do plug in a doctor on back to help you with that, which helps us avoid any sort of messy FDA regulation.
That makes sense. Got it.
Do you see a world in the future where the average company, maybe outside of our tech bubble, is like giving budget to employees specifically for preventative health, right? Like sort of health insurance broadly is a pretty standard benefit, but feels like preventative health is like, potentially the next place that employers want to invest.
Undoubtedly. So one of the challenges in healthcare today is because the average American is transitioning jobs every 2 to 3 years, and that healthcare is tethered to your employer. That means it's just a game of bag passing, where the insurers don't really have an incentive to underwrite anything that's a bit more long-term or preventative or optimization focused, like getting your testosterone checked out. So in that world, the insurers don't necessarily want you to get access to things like superpower and have it be covered. So that's where employers will ultimately step in and potentially start to cover these types of things as supplemental benefits, because they're going to drive clear employee retention, acquisition in a market where it's only more competitive to get the best people.
What's an underrated supplement right now? It feels like magnesium. Magnesium's hot.
Atia takes 6 different types of magnesium.
I
also take 6
4.
different types.
You take 6 different types.
I'm only on 4.
You're only
I gotta
on
get my
4.
numbers up. Those are rookie
brutal.
numbers. What do you think the next kind of magnesium? I've been surprised to see creatine in the timeline so much, just because it seems like
it's
something
very
that
Lindy.
It's Lindy. People have been taking it forever.
Methylene blue is in the timeline.
Methylene blue. I'm 50-50.
Yeah. But what's your take, Jacob?
I got one for you. Oral BPC 157.
I've been on oral BPC 157.
Oh, yeah?
This is the Wolverine peptide.
Oh yeah.
Jordy's tip. It's from the Wolverine protocol.
Yeah.
Okay. 157.
No, this is what it's sort of. Is it semi like there's an interesting thing right now where there's like substances that are banned by various like sports
WADA
organizations and leagues that as a CEO you can just take, right? So like if a pro athlete is like wanting to take something but can't because it's very effective, but it's so effective it's maybe made illegal.
In the world of sports, why not?
Yet if you're a CEO or a capital allocator, why not get on some BPC 157?
Interesting.
In Silicon Valley, performance enhancing drugs are encouraged.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, it's an interesting time right now. I mean, it feels like these sort of like psychedelics, like have long been a part of Silicon Valley culture. But I think that performance drugs, not just exogenous testosterone, but I think they will just become more and more popular. Where it's going to move beyond founders are on maybe they're on caffeine or nicotine and creatine, but onto like really optimizing peptides in the way that. You mentioned it. People like Bezos are probably doing to some degree.
Better sleep. Yeah, makes a ton of sense.
But anyways, great to have you on, Jacob. Very exciting.
Congratulations.
Anything else? Anything you want to plug before we end?
Gentlemen, I appreciate the time, but maybe before I leave, I'll give you both a quick sneak preview of our AI doctor product that we're launching very shortly. So Jordy, if you have any questions for the algorithm, maybe how to boost that testosterone.
There we go.
What's how much BPC 157 can I take before I explode? What is the LD50 of BPC 157? Because I'm going to the max. I want to look exactly like Wolverine.
John has the highest natural T levels of, I think.
Yeah, but imagine how much higher they could be if I was on the Wolverine stack. That's
if John 2x his T, it would be potentially a world record.
So, I mean, obviously foundation model plugged into that, but then also built on top of your own data, so you can query your own lab results and get customized recommendations. Is that the idea?
Exactly. So
and then as soon as it as soon as it like makes a firm recommendation, kicks you over to a doctor before it starts violating FDA rules, basically.
Exactly. The way to think about it is the world's best doctors will spend hours and hours with you on whiteboards, connecting all the dots in your health, but that computation doesn't scale at a higher price point. So we're democratizing it.
That's awesome. Love to see it.
Love it. Awesome, Jacob. Congrats to you and the whole team. Cheers.